What's going on, everyone? Scott here. Welcome back to the channel. So, Michigan State's 2024 football season, first season under Jonathan Smith, comes to an end with a 41-14 loss to Rutgers in Spartan Stadium on Senior Day, and what officially knocks Michigan State out of bowl game hopes this year. That is now 3 years in a row without a bowl game, and 4 of the last 5 years without a bowl game. Not fun, I can tell you that, but we're going to just break down this game a little bit here, talk about what we saw, if there's any positives that can come from this. I think there's like 1 or 2 that you can take, but not much else. Just going to talk about the game here, give a little brief off-season preview. We'll have a longer video recapping this season, what we need to see in the off-season from this program, Michigan State, Jonathan Smith, going into his first full off season. I mean, I guess last year was kind of a full off season because he was hired about the day after the end of the season. So really second off season here in East Lansing, what we want to see. We'll have another video, longer form video of that, but really just want to talk about this game here. So we'll do that, but before we jump in, if you could just hit that like and subscribe button down there. More Michigan State football content on the channel throughout the off season. As I said, we'll be back sometime this week, more than likely, with a little bit longer overlook of this 2024 Michigan State football season, the first season under Jonathan Smith. We'll be back. I'm actually about to record right after this one a Michigan State football recruiting video in preparation for early signing day this Wednesday. The portal opens here soon. It's going to be a busy little bit here for Michigan State football. And then obviously Michigan State basketball gets back on the hardwood on Wednesday, so we'll be back Wednesday morning with a preview for that one. But anyway, just make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss a video. So jumping into the game, it was a fast start for Michigan State. They ran right down and 75 yards all on the ground. First drive to open up the game, get up 7-0 on Rutgers, and it was pretty much downhill from there the rest of the game. They then went scoreless until very late in the fourth quarter, where Jack Velling finally got a touchdown. We'll get more on that here in a second, but really, I guess really just starting with Rutgers. I mean, what we talked about coming into the game, Kyle Monangai knew that he would be a problem, one of the better running backs in the Big Ten, and just absolutely ran it down Michigan State's defense throats all afternoon. 31 carries for 129 yards and a touchdown. I mean, even Antoine Raymond, 9 carries for 71 yards. That's 7.9 per carry. He had 2 touchdowns. Just absolutely in what has been a strength for Michigan State for a majority of this season, something we harped on before the game. Run defense just did not show up in this game at all, and I get it. It's tough that the whole defense as a whole, I mean, even receiving, they had some 157 yards through the air for Callum McManus, Rutgers quarterback, but the secondary depleted with injuries, and, the defensive line, as we said, had been up and down all year. There had been signs earlier in the year that, starting the season, kind of fast up front, and then, kind of, been up and down all year, but hey, listen, you had to credit Rutgers. They came in and they just ran the ball down your throats all game. There's not much else to say about that. I mean, the splits for Rutgers, 157 through the air, 150 for Michigan State through the air, 218 on the ground, 126 for Michigan State. The biggest thing was that they just, and I think they lead the Big Ten. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure they lead the Big Ten in time of possession. 35 minutes and 8 seconds time of possession for Rutgers, leaving 24 minutes and 52 seconds for Michigan State. When you compound that with 3 for 9 on third down efficiency for Michigan State, 0 for 3 on fourth down, and Rutgers goes 7 for 13 on third down, 1 for 1 on fourth down. That's how you end up with a 41-14 lopsided score in this thing. And then on the Michigan State side, as we said, started out really fast. Both the running backs I thought were having a solid game. Lynch-Adams and Nate Carter. 9 carries for 69 yards, 7.7 average for Lynch-Adams. 7 carries, 47 yards for a 6.7 average and a touchdown for Nate Carter. And Nate Carter, that number would have been close to, if not over 100, if had a holding penalty on a pretty long, 40, 50-yard run early in the game. I believe that was the first half still. I think that was the second quarter, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, second quarter, I believe it was. Had a long run got right on the doorstep of the end zone. Holding call, bring it all the way back. So I thought the running backs were solid in this game. But yeah, the offense just wasn't able to generate enough plays on offense. And really, that's just been the story for a majority of the season. Just hasn't been able to create enough plays. Like, we've seen incredible Nick Marsh games. I mean, Nick Marsh, as we said, best player on the field for Michigan State. Best player on the field either side of the ball, more than likely. This game, again, 2 catches, and that's how it's been the last couple weeks. 2 catches, I believe, in the last 3 games. This will be now for Nick Marsh. We said he's got to get the ball in his hands 8 or more times. He did get the ball on one end around, jet sweep, whatever you want to categorize that as. So got the ball 3 times. It's just not enough. He has to have the ball in his hands more. Aiden Childs didn't turn the ball over again. And as we said, I think that since the first bye week before going into Iowa, which was Michigan State's best game of the entire year, he has been solid with hanging on to the ball, not having silly turnovers. 13 for 23 in this game, 150 yards and a touchdown. I mean, I thought he was solid enough. I just think, it comes down to, look, we're going to get into more of it, but one of the reasons, offensive line depth, something we talked about all season long, just had a handful of injuries early on in the season that really set Michigan State back depth-wise on the offensive line, and that continued to hurt you all season. And I think that's how you can... I think if Aiden Childs was playing behind an offensive line that was a little bit more experienced and was a little bit more healthy in terms of being able to, get fresh legs in there, and especially in games like this. I mean, come on. I was in the stadium, and, obviously, even just watching on TV, you could tell it was tough conditions out there, and being able to rotate a couple guys in would be huge, and, that just wasn't the case for Michigan State on the offensive line this year, and, I think that had some to do with Aiden Childs' play. And as we said, I thought he's been solid this second half of the year. I think in the first half of the year, you saw a couple more like the Maryland games where he did pop off for these huge, what was the Maryland game? Like 350 yards or so passing, 3 touchdowns. Like, we didn't see a lot of that the second half of the year because as the year went on, I think, as this usually happens throughout a football season, but offensive line wore down, depth just wasn't there. But I think his decision-making has gotten a lot better throughout the year. I think we can all agree on that. Like, yes, we want the 250 yards per game or more average, 2 or 3 touchdowns a game, and, 40, 50 yards on the ground with his feet. But, that'll take time. Again, first full year starting for Aiden Childs. And, hey, listen, if you're sick of hearing that, that'll be the last time you'll hear that because, well, Michigan State isn't going to a bowl game. So next time Aiden Childs is playing in a game, this will be his second full year starting. So those excuses are now out the window. And I did like his comments after the game, kind of just, which he's been accountable all season, taking accountability for the offense as a whole and really for this team. I think my vibe from the post-game comments is he's taking this team as a leader on this team. I mean, he was, literally had just got here, going into August, had just been here for 8-9 months, and he was already voted a captain for this team. And I think that's going to continue in the offseason for Aiden Childs and this team. And then, I think another positive, too, that you can kind of take into the offseason, Jack Velling. He obviously had that scary hit last week. Glad to see him up, being able to play, and everything's good there. But he's had a rough season. It's no secret. He was one of the players that we were super high on coming into this year, and it just didn't work out. Like, the first year, it didn't work out. But having your best game as a Spartan, the last game of the year, going into the offseason, what's going to be a big offseason, 5 catches, 77 yards, and you finally get in the end zone, a guy who was tied for the college football lead last year with 8 touchdowns from the tight end position. That, I think, is big going into the offseason and something you can kind of carry over into the offseason and, and see where this thing goes defensively. I mean, I do like, yes, it was tough, but seeing those young guys, especially in the defensive backfield, kind of just get thrown to the wolves, really. Guys like Jalen Thompson, Justin Denson Jr., those guys in the defensive backfield just kind of had to be thrown out there out of necessity. Those guys, they probably weren't really expecting to play, but, staying under their red shirt this year, 4 games, really, and didn't really expect to be playing, big time snaps this year, but they were just kind of thrown out there because of the amount of injuries that were in that defensive backfield. So I like the progress that I think those guys, now that they have some uh, game experience, can take into the offseason, learn from it, and just continue to get better going into next year. But that'll do it for this year for Michigan State. Obviously, we talked about special teams a little bit, struggling on, punting, had the bad punt that, went down at the 2 yard line, whatever it was. Michigan State was able to hold them to a field goal there. But, going into the offseason, there's a lot. And as I said, we'll get into a longer video of what to expect from Michigan State. But we got signing day this week. As I said, we'll have a video out for that. But overall, I think you can say at least for me, and I believe a majority of fans, and I'm not saying this for the same reason that some fans are saying, but I think you can categorize this as a disappointing year one for Jonathan Smith and Michigan State because, listen, the standard at Michigan State is and will always be bare minimum is making a bowl game. You haven't done that the 2 previous years coming into this year, and yes, the schedule was tough. It got even tougher with how good Indiana was. It was kind of like, all right, you're facing this tough stretch end of September and, throughout the whole month of October. Get into the beginning of November and listen, you got Indiana waiting for you, Illinois, Purdue, Rutgers, 4 winnable games is how you looked at it at the beginning of the season. And let's face it, I mean, Indiana is a top 10 team right now, was on the cusp of playing in the Big Ten championship game, will be on the cusp of possibly making a college football playoff, depending on how things break their way here over the next week or so before that's decided. But listen, this was a schedule in which you got out to 3-0 beginning of the year, and I think it's frustrating that, and we've talked about this kind of throughout the year too, the 5-7 record, not missing a bowl game, makes it even more frustrating because, yes, six wins a bowl game is the bare minimum floor at this program. That is how it will always be. More needs to be expected, and more is expected from this program, but the absolute bare minimum is a bowl game that now hasn't been reached the last 3 years and for the last 5 years. And the frustrating part is you had a handful of games throughout the year where you just pull that out, you're going bowling. You pull 2 of these out, you're looking at 7 wins. 8 wins was on the table. That's why before the year, we said, I think 8 wins. I'm a little on the higher side, but I think 8 wins, but nothing lower than 6 wins. I mean, you go back to September, the Boston College game was in your hands. You kind of threw that one away. Later on in the year, the Michigan game, yes, they just had a big win on Saturday against Ohio State. But this is probably besides the 2020 year, this is probably the worst Michigan team, at least in my lifetime, and probably for a lot of your lifetimes as well. Yet you weren't able to pull that one out. That Illinois game, that was a very beatable Illinois team. We talked about it before the game. Yes, they solid defense, solid pieces. They're top 25. They've had some good wins this year, but that was a game that you should be able to win. And then this Rutgers game as well, especially at home. The stuff that was on the line to go to a bowl game, send the seniors out right, and just kind of especially get blown out. Like if you lost the game 14-17, and something happens because of the weather, you slip, you fumble a ball, and that's a little more excusable. But getting blown out like this, and so right there, that just rattling off 3 games right there that you could have. If you win one of those games, you're going bowling. You win 2 of those, you're looking at 7 wins. You win 3 of them, you were at my prediction of 8 wins before this season, and it just didn't happen. But as I said, we'll be back. About to record immediately after this the recruiting video that you should see on Tuesday morning, getting ready for Wednesday's early signing day. And then we'll be back probably later on this week, maybe later on in the weekend, with a more broader overview and chat about this season and what we can expect in the offseason for Michigan State football. But anyway, that'll do it for this one. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Peace out.